Welcome to the Mentors Office podcast. In today's episode, we are excited to welcome Cristian Ceja. Cristian is Vice President of Technology and Head of Technology Practices and Communities at WiseLine, where he shapes the company's overall technology strategy while nurturing talent and fostering internal tech communities. With over 17 years of tech experience in tech and consulting, his strategic leadership has been instrumental in scaling WiseLine technical communities and guiding the team's success. Cristian, welcome to the Mentor Service podcast. A pleasure.
Thank you, Alvaro. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I really like all the topics related to communities and technology. So it's gonna be a great place to learn from you.
Yeah, I hope.
I want to start with something that I do pretty frequently in podcasts, and is to understand better the beginning of the career. And let's go back to the beginning when you were a child. What did you dream of becoming when you grew up?
Well, I mean, almost 9 of 10 Latin American kids asked me in the 80s want to be a soccer player, footballer. Yeah, that was my dream. Yeah. I mean, where I grew up, it was a little city in Mexico. Um, and by that time, it was just or normal to play in the streets with your neighbors. Um, and yeah, at that time and I'm talking when I was 4 or 5 years old, I really dreamed with be a soccer player, and I was like, imagine that I can uh, score in a final in the World Cup or something like that, right? I, I think that was my first dream, right, to become a soccer player, and obviously I was part of some teams when I was a kid and then as a teen, but also in my teen years, I started like music as well. My dad used to play guitar, and because I was obviously as a kid seeing my dad playing guitar, it was interesting for me. So I also started playing. So in my teens, I was playing soccer, but also I was like, I want to be a musician.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, but also as a kid, I was really, really
And
curious.
what kind of music did you want to play at the time?
Oh, I mean, my dad, because obviously when you grow up, you like what you are listening. So my dad liked boleros and that kind of stuff because obviously my dad is from the 50s. Uh, but yeah, but I'm from the 80s, so I was more on the hard rock, right? So Guns N' Roses and that kind of stuff, like American hard rock. So I really like that part. So I start playing, and I actually today I still play, right? But for some time, I was really focused on music. So besides school and soccer, I was playing, right? But from my childhood, it's interesting because I'm from the 80s, and obviously some bias here, but I think it's one of the best generations. But but let me say why. I think it is because in part I grew up without internet, right?
Right.
So I lived through the transition with no internet, with now having internet. So as a kid, I was always curious, and for me it was more on the side of how things work, right? So I was, for example, watching TV, and I was like, it's really weird how you can see someone speaking on that little shape, and I don't know how that get to there, because if you think about it, is someone speaking, for example, right now I know you are in Colombia and I'm in Mexico, and it's like wow, how that
Yeah.
happens, right? So as a kid, for me, that was like a amazing magic. And if you think about that 100 years ago, if you could tell people you're going to be speaking with someone in a video call, they would call it black magic, right?
Right.
So that's amazed me, right? Like I was really curious about how these things work. So in a sense, when I was a kid, that was the kind of curiosity I had, that ultimately it took me to start involving more in technology, right? Because of the internet and that kind of stuff. It's like
Okay, so the internet wave was the thing that really caught your attention to start that
yeah, I
technology
believe
path.
so. Yeah, I believe so because I had the opportunity to explore more from home, right? So it was like interesting how things work in a way that you couldn't do it before because you had to go to a library or something like that. It was not that easy for a kid of my age to have that kind of knowledge at hand. But with internet, you do have that. So that's really interesting, right? Obviously, it had disadvantages because I think kids today it's easier for them to research and finding things. It was not that easy on back in the 80s, 90s, right? Because you really need to develop this, um, let's say, a skill of looking for things and finding those things and shaping your ideas, etc. And today, I think that is more easy because you have a lot of info. But also at some point you can think that people tend to be more lazy because they have everything at hand and tends to be more desperate when things not happening as fast as they want. But well, I'm not a sociologist, but it's just my opinion about it.
And
So
when did you
yeah,
start having that goal of becoming a VP of technology? Was it pretty early
I mean, I think
or
it was
when?
not a goal. Yeah, I think it's like where life takes you. For what for me was clear when I started engaging more with technology, and I was interested more on how things work, right? And that ultimately take me to understand or focusing more on the quality of products. Um, Obviously, I had a career on software engineering, but also when I start on the professional area, I start working with companies, and I was in product development. It got my attention how the users interact with products. So that was like I really fell in love with that, right? Like it's not only how we create things, it's like how we experience those things. And and at some point, as a user, before being a professional, I was like, I don't know why this works like this way. It should be better in this way. So at the end, I was like it was like a match when I found that we have roles in the industry for people that is criticizing what is happening with a product. But if you took that um, and convert that into a suggestion of improvement, then you will find a way to have a better product, right? So that is how I get more involved on that side. And for me, answering your question about who I am or my role today is not that I was like I want to be a VP or something. It's not about titles. For me, it was more about I had a goal, and for me, it was someday I want to be leading development of products. Someday I want to um, lead in an organization or leading a company who create or build products. And kind of life takes you on that way because it's like you have that goal, and then because of the experience you are living that are taking you to that goal, you ended up having this for example in my case that I'm not today I'm VP, but I was not looking to be a VP. I was looking to how can add more value to create a product, to bring value to the teams, to bring value to what we are doing and how we are building what we do. And that is what happened. It's like happens. Sometimes it's
Definitely.
like that's one part, right? But the other part is like if we want to be really picky about it, I believe in lucky, you know, that's also important. I think I was in the right place at the right time, and that also plays a, a thinky into a situation.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I don't know if you could tell us a little bit more about the story of how did you become WiseLine VP of Technology and head of practices and communities. What's the story?
Yeah, well, I've been here in the company for the last 7.5 years. So when I start, it was a company that no more than 100 people.
Well,
And and actually, when I joined, we didn't have different practices or communities or different career paths. It was software engineering, and software engineering. That's it.
Okay.
Right. So part of what I did is like it could be interesting because I have background on quality assurance already, but at that
Mhm.
time, so for me, like entering into organization where we're developing product, but without quality assurance, for me was like a what? What? I mean, what's the point? We are developing this, but we're not in testing that we are doing it how it's expected. So I was like a not a pioneer, but in part one of the first ones in the company that were thinking more on the hey, what are our quality practices? How are we building the products, and how we can do it better? So I start pushing for that, and by that time, my manager at that time, because one of the key indicators of someone that really thinks about quality is that normally these people complain a lot. Complain a lot about the product, about the processes, about how things are happening. So my manager was like, Chris, you have talent on the side of detecting problem, right? Um, but if you maybe evaluate that problem and also bring me that problem, but suggesting a solution for the problem, I think it's gonna be better. So for me, it was like mind blowing. Like, I mean, he's right, right? Like I have a superpower. I can detect things before others, and if I take that as a talent that I can use, I can change things. So
Right.
from I start doing that in WiseLine, right? I start like detecting what we're doing wrong, in my opinion, and then bringing that to the leaders with a solution. So they stop seeing me as someone complaining and start seeing me as someone that detects a problem and is bringing a solution to
Yeah, that
make
creates
things
value,
better.
not just complaining.
That's it, right? So that's what's a big change for me in my career and the part of it because I they start taking me more into account my opinion and what I was suggesting, and we start implementing things. One of those was like having different career ladders, for example, right? Because I mentioned earlier that we only have software engineering, so we started the difference: DevOps, QA, cloud engineers, tech writing, UX, etc. So it was like interesting to see how the company start flourishing into the career development of the different roles that were involved in product development. Um, and well, eventually, because of this focusing on adding value and how we were growing as a company, I started having more opportunities on leading. First, I started leading the quality assurance. At some point, I had the opportunity to lead quality assurance and cloud engineering. And eventually, I got the opportunity of leading the whole technology organization. But it happened after 7 years working here in the company.
Very interesting. Very interesting story. And one point that you talk about, and I, I'm really interested in learning more, is well, you started from when the company was smaller. How was that story of when you scaled the QA practice from just 40 people to 150 people in just 12 months? And what was like the single most important system or lesson that you learned there to implement that kind of growing that team at scale?
I mean, the challenge you can think about the challenge on numbers, and that would be like I mean, if we really have to grow on that scale, the difficulty of having the interviews, to having the enough interviewers, to having the pipeline of people to bring to a company, because we are talking about if we grow from 3 to over 180 people, it's like if you think about it at that time, because of the number of interviews we did to cap that among of talent, that took us like over 1,000 interviews easily, or 2,000 even. So first, it was the difficulty about how we can scale interview that amount of people so we can have the talent. So at first, we obviously need to create a framework, how to do it, also create new innovative ways to bring more talent and interview more talent in a scale. So we run, for example, interview days where we bring a lot of people to the offices, and that day we interview 10 or 20 people. So we bring together the team of interviewers to do that in one single day. That kind of exercises that when you don't have like that rapid growth, you're not doing this kind of exercises, right? And then in the other hand, you have the challenge of keeping your culture, because that's challenging in a way that is not the same where you are present with 10 people or 20 people and you have the opportunity to know everyone by their name and what they do in their aspirations. That's having over 100 people. So for me, it was challenging also as a leader to change how I did things, because as I mentioned earlier, you cannot do the same with 3 or 4 people that with over 100. You have to change how you impact those people. And I start learning more about how to shape organizations. And it was interesting period of time, right? Because I started reading, for example, there's a book called The Tipping Point that I started reading because it explains how to create trending things. So for me, it's like how can I make this that I want to happen in this community of 100 people a trending, right? So it explained to you, for example, that you should go for the law of the specials, and that means that people that are popular and how you leverage on those people to help you shape the others. Then you have the context law, and that means that how you change the context so people act or behave in a way you want, but you are not directly impacting with the people, you are impacting the context of that people. So they ultimately behave in a way because reacting of that context. And ultimately, obviously, you have the marketing law, and what that means is how you do branding of the culture you want to portray to the team. So I focus on those 3 things and start working around that. So we start create leader communities within the communities, and start like a naming champions for these communities. So at some point, because we were over 180 people within QA, I have 18 communities because I was like dividing or creating little pods of 10 people with a champion helping me to manage that. And I was at the time having scenes with these 18 champions um, only, and not with the whole team. So they helped me to start leveraging the culture we want to shape at that point. So it was challenging. Just summarizing, it was challenging on the how we can have initiatives so we can interview that amount of people to grow as we wanted. But also on the other hand, we have to plan how to shape the culture so we don't lost what we have as wasteland culture, right? How we can be more close to people, even when we are over 100, etc. So it was really interesting period of time when we grow on that way and we learn a lot of things.
Very interesting lessons related to community and culture. Definitely, that must have been a big challenge for you. And currently, you are the VP of Technology and Head of Practices and Communities at WiseLine. What does a typical week look like for you, and where do you focus most of your energy?
I don't get bored. You can bet. Well, I mean, my weeks are a blend of strategy, focus, and hands-on support. And what I mean by that is I spend time aligning with the business priorities with executives, but also portions with my time is how I align that business priorities with community leaders and engineers. Um, and I think that's a tricky part, right? Because you have to review frameworks, to review the accelerators you are using. Um, Also, obviously, I participate in removing blockers when the teams have blockers, or the leaders of the communities have blockers or doubts, etc. So a big part of my time goes into building this adoption of the different strategy, and see how this conversation or a small intervention to unlock things that are more bigger aligned to the business. But the tricky part for me is that, right, like obviously we are in a company that likes innovation and likes technology, but on the same time we're a company, so that means that we obviously have to provide services to our clients to thrive on business, and that means that you have to align this everything that the communities are doing with the business objectives we have as a company. So that's the tricky part, right? Because obviously at some point communities wants to do X, Y, S things, but if ultimately this is not aligned to business priority, what we should do is looking at way how we can align those things, and that's the tricky and challenging part. So most of my time is like that, right? Like reviewing pipelines, see what is happening with our clients, understanding the problematics we should have in the different communities. Because today we have software engineering, that's application engineering that includes mobile and software engineering. We have quality insurance, we have cloud, we have product, and just to mention some. And each of those have a leader and director, and that are reporting to me. So we have to plan different strategies that we're applying. Also, our stakeholders are capacity, talent acquisition, um, and we also really work close with people operations. Uh, so the definitely the type of different topics that we should work within each week are really really different, and sometimes it's really active, right? Like in a same day I could have to manage 3 or 4 different topics from the different areas.
And what is the biggest challenge that you're facing right now as a VP of technology, both leading strategy and technical communities?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it's not only today, but normally what is challenging in the services technology companies is how we can do things fast, but at the same time deep, right? So speed and deepness, how you can get along with those two is interesting. So I was mentioning earlier, when we are discussing with teams about priorities, we should think about the business, but also we should think about how can get along with the communities. So that's a challenging and tricky part. Because also it's like we should do it this fast because we are in technology services, and you are competing with another companies that do the same, and technology is advancing at giant steps. So you should align. Today, for example, is AI, right? How we are applying AI strategy to the whole company and the services we are providing. So that's an interesting part, because it's not only because you could think about that as a, okay, we're using this tool, or we are building this tool that to offer to our client, but it's also a mindset, right? Because today AI can be used for anything of what we do as an engineers, but also it's like this kind of type of mindset is like, okay, I am using AI to create, and you could believe that as someone that is embedded within technology as a software engineer, for they will be normal to use AI, but it's not. So we are facing some challenges on that side, right? Like how we can shape the mindset of people so they can embrace AI to use in the everyday activities, or within the software development lifecycle. So that's the challenge really today. But on general, is aligning business with technology, and do it fast, right? Because as I mentioned, we are in really competitive environment.
And when you mention deep, what do you mean by that? Can you give me maybe an example?
Yes, I mean we were talking about AI, so I'm gonna provide an example on that. Um, it's not the same to do prompting and just request something as with generative AI. Um, to go deep is like when you are talking with a client, understanding what's the real problem and how you can use AI to solve that problem, and not just use AI just because, right? It's first understanding, go deep on understanding how it works, what is better, what can I propose. And today, the other day I was having this conversation with Andy Echeravide, who is our CAIO, and he's like, man, you go and kick a rock, and under the rock you have like 1,000 new AI thinkies, right? so 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 what I mean when going deep is you can recommend anything to the client, but you had sometimes to stop and analyze on deep what is better as a solution. And I think in a way, because we are not that big as a company in comparison with our competitors, um, we can adapt to what is better to a client. Obviously, we have our opinion about the tooling or what can be used, but it's also a part of the conversation to go deep, understanding the necessities and how we can solve better. And not only be on a superficial conversation when I'm only saying that, okay, I'm using AI, I will do this prompt, and because of what it's generating, you're going to receive this output. Normally, with a conversation in that way, with a client that is clear, that is 9 of 10, they're going to say like, hey man, if you're gonna do this, my team can do this. I'm looking for more on deep consultative
Yeah, consulting
support.
mindset,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, and that is what I mean, because it's easy, because right now we have AI to just give just a superficial responses. So be fast and go deep. What I mean is we have to do it rapidly, but also we should maintain the consulting mindset when we are having this conversation and offering our services.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And another topic that I really like, and you work in this every day, is the culture of innovation within communities. How do you codify something as intangible as the culture of innovation into a set of initiatives that can be taught and scaled in a big company such as Wizeline that has, I think, that more than 2,000 employees now, right?
Chess. And when you have that amount of people, is also what I was mentioning earlier. You kind of lose control on that shaping. So what you start doing is shaping the framework and the context to that people, right? Obviously, you have to have a clear goal and be specific about what we are looking for as a company, and then you have these different tools or indicators that can help you to shape that. In my opinion, what are used the most, and in part I mentioned it before, is like, okay, we focus on champions, right? So you have a program of people that can help you to try the culture you want within the company. So you have centers of excellence, you have champions, you have a group of people in the different regions within the company that are helping you to shaping and understanding what is happening, so you can adapt better. And you also have the context, right? For example, we are migrating things of the way we work with AI. So we start running in the company what we call AI Unlock, um, and that is to help all the public, all the Westliners, even if they are not in technology, what AI means, right? And how they can use AI in the everyday activities, and how they can adopt. So we start running a AI Foundations program, and that's another thing, right? Like we're changing the context so they understand that AI is the new Google, right? At some point, and I was mentioning when I was a kid, if I really want to know something, I got to go to a library or ask daddy about it. But today is like the other day I was talking with my daughter. She's 5 years old, and I didn't know the answer for what she was questioning me. She was like, "Don't worry, that you can look at Google." Yeah. So today is like that, right? And with AI now, we should think like that, because the next generation is going to be normal for them to have a conversation with ChatGPT or with DeepSeek, etc. That would be the normal day to day. Um, Actually, there is this study that said that most of the people use ChatGPT as psychologists. Imagine that, right? It's not to solve things. They are like this are discussing with the AI about their life problems, and so it's becoming more normal and normal to have AI embedded within your life. So it's the same. We are trying to change that concept within the company in your day to day. And lastly, the branding thinking, right? How we do the marketing, how we show why AI is here to stay, and how we are championing that outside and internally the company, what we do, and how we can be AI native, etc. And how we shape. Besides that, when we are talking about innovation, is in my opinion is a mindset and how you face things, right? Because you can see a challenge as something that could be not solved, or you could see a challenge as something that can give you an opportunity to learn and to explore and to see how things can happen in a way that is under your control. So it's about mindset. So I normally suggest to a team, I have this framework, I have value framework, but if you have this space to review what you've been doing in your process, but having in mindset how this can be more effective instead of efficient, then you can discover things. And for instance, when we're talking about QA, you have manual QA testing, right? So maybe you are the best QA engineer doing manual, but if you analyze what you are doing, maybe it can be automated. So there is a more um, effective way to do what is being doing efficiently. So that's what I mean. Maybe you have the perfect process, but you have to put in place another process that is like reviewing what you've been doing and if there is a better way to do it. So you can, and it has happened with a lot of clients that we have this kind of discussion because they are like, okay, we're doing it in this way, but then when we are like having a conversation with them, we suggest like, hey, if you change it, you're gonna save some money or save time or save the time for your team so your team can focus on the backlog that you've been ignoring for the last 2 years. So that kind of conversation only grows if you have this process where you are reviewing what is being done and not just doing the things just because. So it's a kind of mindset of make things better, but not in a way that I'm looking for errors or to complain. It's more on looking to improve. And within Western, we
True.
have different.
Yeah, like
That's
they
something
say
that,
the example of, I don't remember who said this, but maybe it was Elon Musk. And the example was that what if you ask someone at the start of the 20th century, what do they want when it was related to transport? They would say faster horses, right? Few would say, I want a car because, that was something that a new idea. No one even had that conception. So sometimes it's not having faster horses, but, thinking of a different paradigm that really can make a really big change.
yeah, thinking out of the box, right? That's another thing that works. And in my opinion, also, believe it or not, for a culture of innovation, uh, should be a culture of specifics. And what I mean by that is, as a leader, you should be really specific about the outcomes we are looking for. And as a follower of a leader, what we need to be thinking about is, okay, if this is the final goal that my leader is looking for, how can I help to get there faster, right?
Definitely. Yeah,
And like
having a visual, having a clear vision. And they also
yes,
talk about
definitely.
this a lot about, actually, athletes talk about visualizing. They visualize a lot the outcome so they can really focus and put the hard work in a single thing, not in like 10 different things and not knowing where to go.
Yeah, because you can think about, and this is said a lot, work smarter, not harder. And I agree with that, but also work specific. like uh, understand where to go and why you should go on that way. Because if not, you may be climbing the wrong mountain, and then you're gonna have your team in the other mountain screaming at you, "Hey,
Or
you were working really hard and smart to get to the top, but you are in the wrong one," right?
that's a really good point. Yeah. And there's a talking about innovation, there's one other phrase that I really like was from the mayor of Curitiba, and his definition of innovation was taking 1 zero out of the budget to something. So
That's really specific.
yeah.
For example, right?
So
Like
it's very interesting because it's how to restrain yourself to something, and it's obviously another kind of framework to look for innovations and opportunities. And I have seen this applied to the real world. And I think it's really interesting. For example, the difference between Waymo in self-driving cars and Tesla or Komayai. That I don't know if you have heard of that company. And is well, Waymo is spending billions and billions, and each self-driving car has lidars and a lot of things, and each car costs like $200,000 or something. The other ones are trying to okay, how do we do solve this with just cameras? That is what humans have. You know, humans just have cameras to solve driving. So what if we do the same and take 1 zero out of the budget, right, for each car?
Yeah, and it was a smart way to do it because obviously they are capturing all this video as data. Then that ultimately is consumed by the AI, so they can learn from that. So now you have thousands and thousands of Tesla video recording the trucks, and that data is used to feed the AI, so the
Exactly.
AI can take better decisions. And well, that's a challenge that the companies have today, right? Because they are like, okay, we want to go AI way, so that's nice, but then they get to understand that to go in that way, they need to have a data governance in place. And normally they don't, right? How they manage the data, how they classify the data, how they use the data as a resource to take decisions. And yeah, definitely that's interesting. And and yeah, that's what I mean to be specific. That's a good one. Taking 1 0 from the cost. And another thing is like setting quarterly goals, or maybe having a conversation with the team. For example, in hackathons, like I love hackathons, but I love hackathons that have a clear outcome. So when you have a conversation with a client, okay, let's list the 5 biggest problems you have today. So we're gonna run a hackathon around solving those 5. So that's in my opinion, a culture of innovation, but with a set goal, right? Because you are letting the teams to solve your problems, and you are being specific about what problems, but the how is free as a team, thinking a way to solve it and think out of the box. So that's kind of exercises of innovation that are cool on the technology. Yep.
And going back to communities, and I think it's very interesting because Wiseline promotes its communities a lot and invests. It's the first company that I've worked with that actually does that, and I think it's really interesting, and I like it. Can you share an example of a community initiative at Wiseland that you're especially proud of?
Yes. It started as a as kind of experiment 2 years ago, because at that time I was leading quality insurance practice, and we have a lot of clients asking if we can do consulting sessions with them to help them understand if they were doing quality the right way, right? Like, okay, our process is okay. We are covering the different stages that should be covered when we are building a product in terms of quality assurance, etc. So at that point, I was like having discussion sessions with my tech specialists, and one of them suggests, why not we offer a service where we are evaluating or assessing the process? Because we've been having lately a lot of clients that are asking us to do that, and we are doing it kind of free. It was like a free consulting session. So we start shaping a model based on TMMI in different levels to understand the maturity of quality processes within a client. And then we start offering that as a service. So I start with quality assurance, and then I got the opportunity to be leading cloud, and we create one maturity assessment as well for cloud. And at some point last year, when I got the opportunity to be promoted to VP, one of my missions was to create a maturity assessment for all the different practices. And starting Q1 of this year, we run globally the maturity assessment for all the practices within WiseLine. So that means that we understand the from the point of view of the different practices, what is the state of maturity in terms of technology of the different projects. So that's a great initiative that is from the communities. And I love it because it's not only understanding how we can help our clients, but also it's about the culture of a consulting mindset for our Westliners, because they have this mission of running this maturity assessment with the client. And that implies that they understand how to run a maturity assessment. They to understand what the different areas that are part of this maturity assessment and indicators to understand what they can do with the client or what they can propose. And we are slowly generating a database so we can compare, okay, on Q1, your maturity was a 3 on this area, and now you have a mission for the next Q, work in a way that you can propose something to the client so you can elevate that maturity on that area. And it's been a cool initiative, all this around maturity assessment, but because also we have several examples with wetliners because of the info they got with this maturity assessment, they can enable conversation with their clients because the ultimately goal is they see us, and by they I mean the client, as a partners with consulting mindset, and not only as another vendor, right? That is just working and doing tasks, and that's important for us. So for me, it's one of the best initiatives that we run globally, and comes from the community and practices. And you're right, by the way. In my last 18 years of experience, I never worked in a company with communities and practices. So it's nice that Westline invest in having this organization running, so we can provide more insights to the Westliners, and they have a group of people and understand direction and strategies in a different ways. Like you have a group that supports you, and you can be sure if you are like providing to our clients the best practices, the best quality, and I really like that.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree. I really like it because it's applying a framework of a theory of information that is that when you have a lot of people, there's a lot of information, and each one has different experience, interact with different clients, have different skills. And if you decentralize the way that people make decisions instead of being just a few leaders in the company, if you take advantage of that whole decentralized network of experts, you take advantage of that giant pool of information and expertise, and not just that few centralization. But if you decentralize it, that's really awesome to take advantage of other people that have great ideas and that maybe know more than, for example, than the CEO, because it's the maybe the CEO is not on day to day working on that specific problem with this specific client. So it's something that the CEO might miss. But if the CEO listens, he can take advantage of that information and that decentralization of, let's say, of of problem solving.
Yeah, and in part is a seeder of talent as well. And as you mentioned, it's like we have different people involved in having these conversations, and it's easier to assess in a way that if we didn't have that, we have no way to be present in all the conversations, right? So having said this different tooling, so we can provide leverage to the people within the project so they can have these conversations, is helping us to be more assertive on taking decisions on delivery or what to offer to the client when we are detecting gaps. And yeah, I think it's also a tool so people can be more participant on the decisions we are taking as a company with clients. And that part is also something that I like. And I didn't, obviously I am biased, right? But obviously it's also something that I didn't have in other companies, to be honest. Um,
Agree. Yeah, the same happened to me. And to close this topic on communities, what do you think are the top mistakes that companies make with practices and community based on your big experience in this topic?
I mean, in the past, in other companies that I have the pleasure to work, even when they have these groups and that help you socialize, or let's say they have QA hood, when you can have conversation with the QA engineers, so they understand what you were doing. It was not like a seriously taken community or practice that can shape somehow how we can offer services. It was just like a social group or something like that. So in my opinion, one of the mistakes that a company which is not investing on communities is that not investing in communities, because communities can give you or provide business value, um, in standardizing how we provide services, or in standardizing how we shape the profiles of the engineers, and that also assures you the service you are provide with the client is standardized, and that means speed, that mean go deeper, and that
Interesting.
mean
Maybe could it be
leverage on
more, if I
scalable
understand
things.
you well, more involvement from the leadership, like the people that have the decision power actually invest also their time in
I mean,
communities?
what I mean is
Or
they are not like treating them like they are treating them like side projects, not treating them like straight assets. And that means in WiseLine is real. We have a community organization and practice organization, but in our companies I didn't have that. Like it was like a side project. Like okay, we have a hub of QA, but it was just like a social community, not a real organization with real budget, with real profit
mm,
that we are looking for something. So I think it's
I
important to
understand.
take seriously having this kind of organization that can help you to on the business side. Mhm.
That is great.
And
And now I want to go into another topic that I really like, or section of this podcast that is related more to career and advice. And I know that we don't have a lot of time, but I still want to do it, try to do it a little bit fast. What was the biggest challenge that you faced in your career, and how did you prepare or overcome that difficulty?
I mean, I have over 18 years of experience in services. So I think it depends. Obviously, you have different challenges depending on your experience of how junior you are. And eventually, when you are having more responsibilities or changing your role, the type of challenge change. For instance, when I started as a QA engineer, one of the challenges was to the team make them understand that quality depends on everyone, not only the QA, right? Because if you think about quality insurance, is how we build with quality, and not only how many bugs I detect in the product. If you think in a chip-led matter, the QA thing is um, how we can create a product or build a product that in production have the less bugs. So then you have teams of testers that are thinking like, oh, I'm really great because I am detecting hundreds and hundreds of bugs. But for me, it was like, no, that means that your quality process of how you build the product is wrong because you have a lot of bugs, right? So the idea should be the other way around. You are not detecting anything because your quality process is awesome. So that was like the first challenge, and also that happened well. And part of the work I did in my beginnings is to shaping that culture or mindset within the quality team, that we should be in the different stages of the support development, because we are adding gates of quality. So in that way, at the end, we have less books, not a lot of books, right? And that's first. But then when I start taking roles of leadership, I had more challenge on the business side or on the growth side. We were talking earlier about how we grow from just three, four, five people to over 100. And then you have a challenge of, well, how can I scale without losing culture, right? So that's a way big challenge. And and now as executive, my biggest challenge is how we can convert business priorities with culture and with innovation. So it's kind of you really had to be clear on the priorities and how we can align those together. And that's challenging experience.
Those are great insights. Thank you. And another question that I have for you is, can you share with us your top three success rules?
Success rules. Wait, I have different ways to explain. I think the first one is focus on value, right? But when we are talking about value, value represents different things for each one. So what I normally tell my teams is when we're talking about value, focus on what you want to do and with who you are doing that, right? And for example, when we are consulting services, normally you are working with a team and you are working with a stakeholder or your client, right? So that means that what represents the value for you also uh, is not the same for the client and probably is not the same for your team. So your first task should be, if I really want to add value, I need to understand what is adding value for me, for my client, and for my team, and align those three. And normally what I said is use my value framework, and my value framework is vision, is value, is each letter. Value is vision, attitude, leverage, unify, and I mentioned earlier effectiveness versus efficiency. So I invite them, if we want to add value, understand the vision of your client, the vision of your team, understand the correct attitude um, in that project and that specific conversations, understand who to leverage with if you want to do something with the client, unify, and that means like you are in a team, right? So if you gather support on your proposals and you go with the client, not alone, but with your team, you're gonna have more chances of probabilities to be accepted, right? Or to accept, they accept to your proposal. And lastly, the effectiveness versus efficiency. Have a process where you are analyzing what you are doing and if you have areas of of engagement, right? And accept that as a culture of improvement and not as a culture of we're doing things wrong. It's not in that way. It's to understand how we can be better. And also, I have the ABC system, right? For me, success is about three things, and success in the sense of creating something is ABC: actions, building, and communicate. So if you really want to be relevant in some situations, you should focus on what are the kind of actions that want to bring me closer to what I want, what those actions are building, and after building that, communicate to the correct public, right? Because you may be doing a great job, a great um, product, but if you're not communicating and no one is looking at it, you no one is gonna know, right? So it's kind of okay. Focus on the goal, the action that I want to take you to that goal. Focus on those action building what you want, and then to communicate that. And that's why I call it ABC. That's the easy
That's
version of value. Yes.
very interesting. I have never heard about that. And we're almost out of time. But before we finish, I just want to ask you if you could be very concise to help me answer these last two questions. And the first one is, what is the most valuable career advice that you have ever received? And the other one is, what advice or what does a great WiseLine employee look like, and what qualities or mindsets do they have need to have?
Oh, interesting questions. And it's difficult to be concise about. So, a ver, on the first one, the best advice I got is like I was mentioning earlier, you have to identify where you are good at it, right? For in my case, I was like really good on finding what is wrong faster than others. But at some point, for me, it was like I stopped mentioning what I was looking as a bad thing because I was afraid others to see me as someone that just criticize. But when I did understand, when I understood that I can use that to make proposals, everything changed, right? So I recognize my
Maybe
talent.
shifting from complaining to creating value, like,
Yeah,
right?
that's the thing. So at that time, I have a manager that mentioned that to me that, hey, you are great to detect problems. You should use that for making proposals, and everything is going to change. And I did that, and to this date, I believe that is something that really helped me to thrive on my career, to flourish. To be honest, because I was focusing on value and not only the problem. So that's a big advice. So with great power comes great responsibility.
And what
And
what and what advice do you have for a wise liner of what qualities or mindsets should they have to stand out?
I think because we're a consulting company, act like an owner, right? Not just execute. Challenge, propose, improve, use their communities to grow your craft, and remember your growth is a mix of what you are offered and what you take initiative to pursue, right? So it's like um, you have to have this consulting mindset. And what I mean by that is you are not someone else just doing tasks within a project. You are someone that you have to believe you are an owner of making things happening, right? So I really like this phrase that said that the universe does not accept representatives, and I mean that to the Westliners. Like, if you really want to shape your career, you are the owner of your career. So when you have this conversation with clients, with your teams, be the owner of how this conversation goes. And there is this book that I love that is called 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And the first chapter is about ownership, extreme ownership. So, ownership, in my opinion, is about location, right? So, another thing that I always tell to the Westlanders is be aware about location. You could be above the line or below the line. And that means that when you are facing a situation, you can be the victim or you can be part of the solution. And obviously, we are
Very
human, so
powerful.
sometimes we're gonna be the victim, and sometimes we're gonna be part of the solution. But the thing, or what I'm asking, is have the awareness
The
to
mindset,
think
yeah,
about the location. Okay, where am I located? Today I'm under the line, so let's treat for be above the line, right?
very
So
powerful advice. I really like it. And well, Christian, I know that I have to let you go now because we are out of time. But thank you very much for your time, and I think that this is a great space to learn and to learn about really important stuff for people working in consulting and in technology, and for wiseliners to keep learning and improving. So thank you very much.
thank you very much to you, Alvaro. It was a great time, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, and thank you to the audience, and see you in the next episode.